Hello and welcome to Center Block Sports. I am your host, John O'Donnell. You are listening to our replay of our interview with Ryan Sparks, who was competing in the Golden Tee World Championships in Las Vegas over the weekend. Ryan joined us live Saturday morning as he prepared to qualify and then compete in the World Championships. Ryan's going to join the show live next week to tell us how it went, so I don't want to spoil it, although it's all over the interwebs. But it was a really, really fun tournament, and we were lucky to have Ryan join the show. During this interview, he's going to explain to you the qualifying format, kind of what it takes to play each course differently, why qualifying is different than match play, and kind of his choices on who may win and who may lose, and more importantly, what it takes to win a Golden Tee World Championships. It was amazing, the amount of play that we saw, the quality of play that we saw, and also the event itself. We're talking about a game that's been around 30 years. The World Championships in current form have been around 4 or 5 years, and now it's a $30,000 prize with over $135,000 in total. So we'll go ahead and join the interview live. I do want to let you know that we will have the Golden Tee World Champion, Mark Stenmark, also on Cinderblock Sports Saturday morning on SKO Radio Network. You can listen to us on SKORadio.com, the TuneIn app, the Simple Radio app, and any Roku and audio-able device. Also, you can get our replays, as you did this one, on YouTube or podcast at iTunes, Spotify, Overcast, and really anywhere you get your podcasts, including SoundCloud. So give us a like, give us a follow, and most importantly, enjoy our interview with Ryan Sparks, Golden Tee World Champion competitor and the Cinderblock Sports Golden Tee World Championship correspondent. And welcome back to Cinderblock Sports. I am your host, John O'Donnell, joined as always by Aaron the Voice K-Back and
The Voice.
And we are now joined by Ryan Sparks. He is our official Golden Tee World Championship correspondent. Aren't you proud of yourself, Ryan? You've made it. You've made it in the world.
I feel like that's a lot to live up to.
Well, you're the first, so you'll definitely be the best and the worst all at the same time. For those of you who didn't listen to the show last week, the Golden Tee World Championships are live in Las Vegas this weekend. Ryan is our horse to win the whole thing, we hope, and he is there live at 8:30 in the morning after what I'm sure was a long night. So again, Ryan, thank you. Let's start with this. Tell us what's going on today, Saturday, at the World Championships.
The things I do for Cinderblock Sports, right? But today we are going to start qualifying at 11 a.m. So we're going to play 5 courses. We don't know which ones they are yet. So they're going to open up the doors at 10. We're going to get in there and warm up and then start to qualify at 11. And they're going to take the top 32 and they're going to put them into match play. And we're going to see who can go on and win $30,000 and win a world championship. That happens tomorrow. But today we are going to go out and qualify and get seeding purposes done and see where we lay.
So, for those of you who don't know, there are 7 active courses every year now. It used to be 5. There are 7 now, and so they are going to pick 5. And I think that, in my opinion, as a player who is a 26 handicap, I certainly play some courses better than others. So you, Ryan, are qualifying against some really good players, and the better qualifying you do, the better your matchups are in elimination. What course or courses would you like to see, and what course or course would you like to avoid today during qualifying?
Well, I hate to name any course because then I feel like I'm jinxing myself. The course that I would like to avoid, the hardest course this year is Crawdad Swamp. Yeah. So that course can set up anywhere from a 26 par to a 30 Golden Tee par, depending on what the look is. But it's a hard Golden Tee par. There's swing holes that can get you. There's water everywhere. There's holes that, if you just miss a little bit, all of a sudden an eagle turns into a bogey. Right. So I'd like to see that course out. The course that I'm playing really well now is Catadreas Beach. So that is a tough course too, since they reset things a couple months ago. So that's a course that can set up from a 29 par to a 33 par. But I feel like I've got a pretty good handle on what's going on in that course right now. So I'd like to see that one in there. I feel like I would have an advantage there.
And you mentioned something that I find very interesting. They reset these courses. I believe it's on April 1st now every year where they put out new tee boxes. And that impact, actually, I don't want to tell you, what impact does that have to the game when they change the tee boxes in the middle of the year? What impact does that have to top level players like yourself?
So not only do they change the tee boxes, they also change the pin positions. So the way it was set from September when these courses came out until April 1st, it was the pins would be in this certain quadrant, and the tee boxes would be in a certain place, and they reset them to, not only does it make the setup different, and John, a lot of this is muscle memory for guys like us. We play the same setup over and over and over, and we get it. But when they reset it, not only does it change the way we look at things, it can also change the par on a hole. So, for example, Pembroke number 2 used to be a par 5 before they reset it. Now it's a drivable par 4. So it changes a lot of things. It makes some holes harder, makes some holes easier, but it's another one where you just adjust to it. It's part of the game, and it's been around for a couple years now, and we're used to it. But it definitely makes things more challenging, especially when you're going right away and not seeing the looks before and having to adjust on the fly.
And just to kind of, again, reset, that's 2 months or 2.5 months before the World Championships happen. Does that create a built-in, I'm going to say, disadvantage, and please, I want your thoughts on this, to the players who aren't in the top 10 or 11, just because those guys play so much more Golden Tee in that 2-month period? I would think they get an advantage there, and it would cause a disadvantage for those players who aren't able to get that much practice, that much muscle memory. Am I overthinking that, or is that a factor here?
I think you might be overthinking it a little bit, just because 2.5 months is a long time for us to get these courses and get a feel for them and understand what we need to do. If it was April 15th and it was the World Championship and those guys that are in the top 10 are playing, 200 games in those 2 weeks, and guys like me are playing 20 or 30, that would be a severe disadvantage. But I probably got, close to 300, 400 games on the new tee boxes. So
gotcha.
Once you get to that point, it kind of becomes second nature. And now if we went back to the old tee boxes, I think that would be more of a disadvantage because we're used to the new ones.
And just one last bit on that then. Do you have a sense of players that don't like this adjustment? I mean, I personally think it's really cool because you change up the courses, right? We have always said, that's part of the reason they added 2 courses, the remastered courses. It gets boring. You play 1 year on 5 courses, it gets boring. So they're making it more interesting. But are there any players who, and you don't name names, but if there are players who don't like the change, is there a particular reason, or do most players kind of accept the change and moved on?
So the big problem with the change was, and it happened last year and it happened a little bit again this year, is they do it in the middle of Worlds qualifying. So when people are already, have a few good games in, and then they change the tee boxes, that can throw a wrench into plans. But as far as what we're looking at today, qualifying, you got the quote unquote top 74 players in the world here. So we've gotten to the point where it's just what we accept, and it's what we're all on a level playing field. So nobody has an advantage over anybody else. We just got to go out there and let our skills, so to speak for themselves. But I don't think anybody's going to have a problem overcoming tee boxes that were put in 2.5 months ago.
We are joined by Ryan Sparks. Ryan is competing in the Golden Tee World Championships today. He is going to do very well, and we are going to be following him. It is streamed online.
Wish I had your confidence.
Oh, Ryan, you're a hell of a player. And here's the thing that people don't understand, and you've mentioned it before, but the consistency is one thing. It's another thing when you're head to head against somebody and you just have to beat them. And there is one player from Cleveland, Ohio that you are dominating in head-to-head competition at 1-0. So let's hope you have to face Mr. Andy Haas and you can get that win.
So I was having a conversation with Greg Kinsler last night, who is two-time world champion. He's been around forever and kind of the golden boy, the face of Golden Tee, so to speak, for a long time. And he doesn't play as much as he used to. And he was kind of talking about that, like, nobody's scared of me anymore. And They are. So people like Andy, people like Greg Kinsler, Mark Stenmark, Evan Gossett, world champion from last year. Those guys have a stigma about them, and when people like me go up and play them, it's intimidating. And that sounds funny, but it's just a video game, right? But those guys have made a lot of money playing this game and beaten a lot of people and won a lot of tournaments. And when you get in and you're face to face with them and you're heads up with them, it can make your fingers shake a little bit. But, it's fun to go up against those guys. You want to beat the best and you want to play the best. So we'll see what we can do today.
You're right. I've played, now this goes back generations almost, but Jerry Arney, who actually worked with Andy when Andy was coming up. And I have played games with those two. And this was when I was, a 20, 21 handicap. And I'll never forget having a chip, one of those big ones, like a 60-yard chip to kind of get into a race with Andy and Jerry as we headed down the stretch. And I ended up I think I 3-chipped and 2-putted it. You just get shaky. These guys have that aura about them. And you're right. It is a video game, but it's a competition. We're here to compete and win. And that plays a role in it. So good story.
$30,000 is a lot of money.
It is. And speaking of good stories, the final spots were, I think, awarded last night. Do you have any idea on how that broke down? Is there any fun stories from last night's festivities that you caught as you were out there?
I do know how it broke down. I was there for it. I was watching it, and it was fun as heck to watch those guys get up there. There was 121 people in the closest to the pin contest last night. They all paid $25. They got, blind draw into bracket play, and those guys just went up there and tried to make a hole in one. So, I was playing at the time. We had our own separate event for people that had already qualified. So I don't know exactly what the distances were, but I do know the people that qualified, a guy named Rick Coppathorn. Okay. So he's from St. Louis. He's friends with a lot of those, St. Charles guys that are kind of the mecca of Golden Tee down there. So he qualified, and then a guy named Chris McKenzie. Everybody calls him Mac. Great dude. He lives in Indy.
I know Chris.
So those were the two that qualified, and they're going to get a chance to play for a world championship starting today, and they are guaranteed, I think, $450.
Yeah, that's the minimum payout.
They won money last night. Yeah.
Well, that's great. And again, we've been joined by Ryan Sparks, our correspondent. He joined us last week. He joins us this week. When he wins this tournament, he's going to join us the week after. And we've been real lucky to have you. I guess, before I let you go, Ryan, one story or one thing you're looking forward to, this weekend. I know you've been around the game a long time, but just kind of a personal story here that what the World Championships mean to you or what you're looking forward to, while you're out there.
So I went to my first tournament, I believe, in 2002 in Las Vegas at the Ice House Lounge. And I started meeting people through Golden Tee. And I've continued to go on to tournaments. I took a little break when my kids were born, but, now I'm back at it and I'm playing pretty well again. But what you look forward to in weekends like this is just seeing your buddies that you don't get to see very often. I mean, I've met so many friends through this silly little game. I mean, people that, I would invite to be in my wedding if I were to get married tomorrow. So, just good people. I'm just looking forward to the camaraderie, looking forward to the competition. We all love each other, but we all like to beat the heck out of each other too. So, that's Golden Tee to me. It's just, it's the camaraderie, it's family, it's friends, it's, just getting out there and doing things that you share a strong mutual interest with other people and, just having fun with it.
I couldn't say it better.
I mean, nothing, no great, I've got a lot of stories, John, about aren't suitable for the air.
Off the air over some beers, but not on the air.
Right.
I could play the Unleashed disclaimer.
Go ahead.
There you go.
Go ahead, Ryan.
This game has grown so much to the point that, I mean, if you go on to YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or some of the other social media platforms today, you're going to be able to watch us qualify. You're going to be able to stream it, and they're going to have thousands of viewers. And that's something that wasn't around a long time ago. So if you go to Golden Tee TV, Richard King puts that on, and you're gonna be able to watch us hit a little trackball around for a while. You're going to listen to Kevin Lindsay and Adam Kramer commentate from a little stage to the side of where we're all going to be playing, and they're going to be giving us play-by-play, and that's stuff that wasn't around a long time ago. So this game is growing. We're going to be on ESPN here in a couple months, and I never thought that would have been possible 15 years ago when I started hitting this trackball.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I know it's early. I know it was a longer night, and I hope it is a long night for you in the qualifying and then in the bracket play coming up. So, Ryan, thanks again for your time, and we will follow up with you next week if you're available, and we really appreciate having you on. Thanks again, man.
All right. Thanks, John. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, talk to you soon. Yep. And that was Ryan Sparks. Again, he is competing in the World Championships. He downplays his chances a little bit, and I have played with Ryan a number of times. He is a great player. He's not a good player. He's not just on because he's in the World Championships. He's on because he has a chance to win them. And it may not be the greatest chance. I think he was a 40-1 bet in Vegas, and the favorites sit around 6-1. But 40-1 odds win tournaments, win championships, and he's one of those that could do it. So we thank him for taking the time so early on a Saturday morning when he is actually competing for a World Championship. He is competing for a chance at $30,000. That is impressive. We were happy to have him, and we hope to have him on next week, regardless of how he finishes. So we have about 15 minutes left in the show. If you're still listening and want to call in on anything, we'll open the phone lines up for you, 234-200-5110. Text or tweet the show. You can tweet us at Cinder Sports. I did want to talk about the Cleveland Indians. The Indians, as I mentioned last week, are coming together as a team. They are playing better baseball. And that's good because they're playing in a division that has one of the best teams, I can't believe I'm saying this, in baseball, the Minnesota Twins. The Minnesota Twins are a beer league softball team playing Major League Baseball. They are smashing the cover off the ball. And that means that the Indians going into last week were 10.5, 11 games back. They're closing that gap. They're playing well. The Twins are also playing well. The Twins had a last-minute win last night. The Indians also had a very good win last night in dramatic fashion. So
it was a crazy game.
It was a very crazy game.
I've never seen a home run called back.
Yeah,
and that ball bounced off the top of the wall. There was a home run all day.
Yeah, and I don't. Yeah, they beat Detroit though. They beat Detroit. The takeaway is they're beating Detroit. I think that's 7 out of 8 or 6 out of 7 against Detroit. Mm-hmm. And again, you look what they did last week. They swept Detroit on the road. You have to do that. You don't have to sweep. In baseball, it's pretty simple in baseball. Win the series. You have 3-game series usually, maybe 4 games. Win them. Or don't lose them if it's a 4-game series. They did not only won, they swept a very bad Detroit team on the road. Then the series that I was looking forward to last week happened. The Texas series. The Rangers lead the Indians for the second wild card spot, the first wild card spot occupied by the Devil Rays at this point. And Texas is a pretty good team, and the Indians took 2 against them, and their bats were hot. They scored 10 runs twice, double-digit runs. Here's the thing. The pitchers that they faced in those games are no longer playing Major League Baseball. They were both demoted, and that says something about the pitching that Texas has right now, but it's Major League Baseball. You play against who you're set to play against, and they did a good job. They then started the home series with Detroit last night. It was a crazy game. They won it, and here's the key takeaways, I think, at this point in the season. The pitching on this team is really good. There are some really good young pitchers on this team. Zach Plesac got his second win this week. He is now 2-2 with a 2.45 ERA. He is the best young pitcher in the organization, not named Adam Scott. Shane Bieber also had a decent game. He's one of those guys, though. He'll have an up game and then a down game. And he threw a gem against the Tigers. He has a shutout this year. You don't see complete game shutouts much anymore. He has one. And even in the game that they lost to the Rangers in the series clincher, he threw 6 innings with 8 strikeouts, and he only gave up 2 runs. And he didn't give up those runs, by the way. Leonys Martin gave up those runs. And that's part of the storyline that I want to talk about with Lindor. Francisco Lindor is a leader, capital L leader on this team. Leonys Martin cost the Indians that game. He made a couple of mistakes in the final game of that Rangers series. And look, it happens. It was a day game after a night game. It was a 7th game on the road. It was roughly 135 degrees in Arlington. It happens. Mental mistakes in baseball happen. And Francisco Lindor, after the first inning, took Martin aside, and they got in a heated debate. And Martin eventually had to be pulled away from Lindor. You need to have leaders like that. You just have to have guys who are going to pull guys aside, and really, more to the point, didn't pull them aside. Really set it to them in the middle of the dugout so everybody could see. If you screw this up, I'm going to call you out and make you better. That's what leaders do. They did it. Lindor really laid the wood to Martin, and that needs to happen. And the same thing. Look at a guy like Jason Kipnis. Kipnis can't hit like he used to. But on that road trip, there were 2 instances where he had a home run that sparked the lineup and ended up in big wins. Even last night, he had a big home run. It's just, he's not going to be that player that we all want him to be. But he plays a really good defensive second base. He's a veteran leader on a very young team. And with him and Lindor is probably gone from this team after next year. But he's doing the best he can to be a leader on this team. And that's exactly what this young lineup means. And the biggest storyline is this young lineup. And my boy, Oscar Mercado. You know, the biggest thing that the front office screwed up here this year was the outfield bats. They gave up Michael Brantley, and they didn't replace him with anyone. Michael Brantley is up for starter as an all-star. And up until now, we've been having to deal with Jordan Luplow and Joe, who are not good hitters, by the way. And one of those 2 plays Major League Baseball. But Mercado has now played in 29 games. He is hitting .315. He has 4 home runs. He's stolen 6 bases. And he's got what's called a WAR, or wins against replacement, of 1.0. That's not great. That's not great. But what it does show is that he is a better than average ball player. And right now, better than average ball player in the Indians outfield is a huge win. You add on to that against the Reds last week, he had that big moment where he was able to come through with a game-winning walk-off hit. That is huge as a young player, right? And his impact on the lineup has been, measurable, and has been huge. He was called up on May 14th. Since that time, they are in the top 10 in Major League Baseball in home runs, runs, and slugging percentage. Before that, Aaron, me, and Joe were better at all 3 categories than the Cleveland Indians. You look at June, they're even higher than that. They're in the top 5 in those categories. And this is exactly where they need to be. They are playing very bad teams from now until the All-Star break. They are 9 games behind the Twins. I'd like to see them get that down to 5 or 6 before the All-Star game. Not only will that put them in a position to make a run after the All-Star game, it will put them in a position to not sell off all the pieces of the team, and it will put them in a position to compete for the wild card if they have to. And look, this isn't new. We keep talking about how bad the Indians have started. This is what happens in Cleveland. We start baseball when it's 25 degrees and snowing. We have slow starts in Cleveland. That's just what it is. The difference is really that beer league softball team that is the Minnesota Twins. And there will be regression. We talked to Cliff Corcoran. He said the Twins will regress. Hitters eventually wear down. Their pitching, not great. The Indians are still the better team if this lineup is the true Indians. I said it last week. I'll tell you right now, it's still June. The Indians are getting better, and that is exactly what needs to happen. And one last note on this. Jose Ramirez is starting not to suck as much as he has. Yeah, I get it. It's kind of like saying a skunk smells better. But it's still progress here, right? He was batting like 158 at one point, and he's up around 200, and he's hitting the ball better. It was interesting. He had a real chance with 2 on and 2 outs in that last game against Texas. And I thought, okay, here it is. Jose Ramirez finally makes his mark. He did crack the ball, but he hit it right at the left fielder, who was in that lovely shift that I hate so. I hate shifting. But it worked, because had that left fielder been where he was supposed to be, air quotes, that would have been a double. He wasn't. He was shifted over and made a great play. Want to say this, though, and this was something that we've talked about with Cliff Corcoran last week. Jose Ramirez has a little bit of bonehead in him right now, and I think it's because he's struggling there was a play where he popped the ball up and he ran very lazily to first base. And Carlos Santana was on first base, and because the pop-up was the second base, Carlos couldn't move too far off the bag, so he had to kind of stay close to the bag. By the time that the second baseman would have caught the ball, Jose Ramirez was halfway down the first base line because he was not running. The second baseman noticed this, let the ball fall to the ground, threw the ball quickly to first base to get Ramirez out on the force out, and they quickly tagged out Carlos Santana for an inning-ending double play. That cannot happen. That just cannot happen. I don't care if it's a game in June. We're talking about very slim margins here at the end of a 162-game season. It's very possible that the margin between the Indians and the Twins, or the Indians and the Rangers, or the Indians and the Red Sox, whoever we're competing for a playoff spot, could be a game, 2 games. And to make a boneheaded play like that, to not control your own mistakes, is inexcusable. But if Jose Ramirez can become 75% of the player that he is or was, the Indians are going to compete. I don't think they're a World Series team. And, here's the thing. If you want to be a World Series team, while you have Lindor, while you have Ramirez, you could get rid of Bauer and Kluber. You could. I mean, Bauer is worth a lot. Kluber, if he comes back and has even 2 or 3 good starts, he's going to be worth a lot to a contending team. And you just have to hope that Clevenger, Carrasco, and the kiddies that are the pitching staff right now with Plutko and Plesac and Bieber, you hope that they can carry this team.
If they're healthy.
If they're healthy. I mean, Clevenger, poor guy. I don't know.
Twisted his ankle again.
Well, did you see how it happened? Mm-hmm. I'd be questionable for life.
Yeah.
He was pitching and he threw the ball and it came back. Even on the replay, you can't see it. If you look at the replay, it looks like the ball was hit softly to Carlos Santana at first base. But the ball actually ricocheted off his leg and then went to first base. Mm-hmm. It was horrific. It looked like he was going to die. And he ended up with a sprained ankle.
Yep.
He'll be okay. He'll be all right. But again, if you want to trade those 2 big pitching pieces you have to get bats, then you can. And we just talked to Adam Scott, and I'm not joking that Adam Scott is a fantastic young pitcher. They got a lot of them. If you look at that Lynchburg Hillcats team, they had 5 All-Stars. 3 of them were pitchers.
Yep.
They have a lot of young talent on this organization. So, and you're seeing Plesac. He's only 23, 24 years old. Bieber's a young kid. I mean, they could definitely put the pieces together to make a run.
Yes.
So that's the Indians. We hope that they continue to play well. The All-Star game is a few weeks away still, but we'll cover that more as it is in Cleveland. And we're hoping to have a couple All-Stars, from the Indians on that team. The All-Star starting votes have been whittled down to, I think, 3 per position, I think. Is that correct?
Yep.
And the only Indian in that mix is Carlos Santana.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Lindor is not on that list, mainly because, as Aaron and I were talking off air, this is a popularity contest. So Gleyber Torres of the Yankees is on that list at shortstop when he has no business being there. Aaron Judge has played like 3 games. He's on that list. It's a fan vote. And because of that, the Indians are never really going to, get too high on that list. We are wrapping up the show for the week. Next week, we are going to have a in-studio guest. Her name is Laura Hanzu. She is the owner of the Ubuto Gym. And I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, and she'll correct me or kick my butt if she can't, because she probably could. She is also a CrossFit athlete. She is an amazing young lady, and she will be joining the show to talk about the training of young athletes. She works with the Medina hockey team. She works individually with a lot of young athletes, and we want to get her thoughts on kids and sports and training and injuries. We hope to be joined by a concussion expert from the Cleveland Clinic to also discuss these things. We're really going to look at kids in sports next week because we're getting on that time of year where high school football is going to start to ramp up more in the first part of August. But sports now, football especially, it's not a seasonal sport. It's a year-long sport. And does that repetition, that over practicing, if you will, does that cause problems? I think it does. I think there is a benefit to diversification. I played 4 sports in high school. I played 3 sports in college. And I think that playing the different sports gave me different skill sets and kept my body relatively injury-free for as big a guy as I was. and still am. So we'll talk to Laura. We'll bring in guests to talk about that. We'll also talk about the Indians, NBA free agency, and a whole list of other things. Aaron will be back. I'll be back. Rick will be back. So the show will have to be great. You've been listening to Cinderblock Sports. John O'Donnell. Aaron, anything before we close up shop today?
Have a wonderful week.
And we hope you do too. From all of us here at Cinderblock Sports, to all of you listening, have a wonderful week. This has been Cinderblock Sports on the SKO Radio Network. Talk to you next week.